Hey, how you doing? It's good to be back. I am just come home from work. I've got a nice cup of tea in this giant mug. It actually looks huge when I put it like that, but it's nice. It's one of those like vacuum kind of flasky mugs. So I've got one at work as well, and I'm not trying to advertise it. But it's really nice, and it keeps. Sometimes I can go out for about 4 hours, come back, and it's still really nice and warm. Oh, that's good. I don't know why I've suddenly got back into drinking tea. I've had a few coffees today, but I think it's more difficult at work to drink tea because you have to kind of brew it and leave it for a few minutes, and I don't always have time to do that, to be honest. So it's nice to come back and have a cup of tea, although I'm hoping it won't kind of keep me awake because I'm having a few long days at the moment, 8:30 till 7 p.m. at night. Um, I mean, there are people who work harder, do more graft. But yeah, it feels like I've done my day's work. Um, and yeah, these dark nights and mornings on a bus. What I like to actually do, I don't know why I sort of lose it a little bit towards the end of the year, but what I do like to do, especially this time of year and moving forward into the summer, I've still got an old Sony Walkman. I wonder if it's knocking about. Let's have a look. Do, 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 do. May have put it back in my bag, but it's a Sony Walkman, and I can hold about sort of like 1600. No, hang on, how many? No, 11,000 tracks on it. Don't get to listen to them all at once, obviously, but it's what I like to do is I like to make playlists, and something I learnt actually when I was doing psychology, and I came across it by accident when I was looking for an angle to look at music and memory, and I came across this thing called reminiscence bump a little bit earlier. And I thought that's really interesting. Um, and at the time, I was just kind of hitting for. I think I'd just gone past 30, and essentially a reminiscence bump is kind of thing where if you can imagine, I use this finger. Um, if you can imagine you kind of live in a moment, then at some point it kind of goes up, and at this point you start to remember everything from before. Um, so you start to like amass nostalgia and stuff like that. And I do wonder actually whether that's still relevant for people today who are just kind of maybe reaching that age, whether they reminisce about stuff like I used to. Because I think the world's changed quite a lot. We have social media, and it's very instant. You live in a moment. Um, and people actually talk about how time isn't sort of behaving the same way. How it's even though it's linear, it doesn't feel like it's as long as it was. And maybe that is the magic of the internet and social media that we don't process time like we used to. And I think with the season slightly changing, so I mean, like we've just had a little bit of snow, which feels very seasonal, but it hasn't been that way for a while. So when I think of a reminiscence bump, I kind of think of very linear, very structured timelines of my youth, and one of the main things in my youth was like music. When I was a kid, when I was probably when I was 8 or 9, I started to take more notice of music, not necessarily because of the quality of it, but mostly kind of novelty stuff and stuff that was played on a loop on radios. And people say, you lived through the Sex Pistols, you lived through the Clash. I said, well, I wouldn't have been interested in them then. I was more interested in the Wurzels and A Taste of Aggro by the Barrow Knights. And I think that, that was my innocence as a child to actually just enjoy um, the music and the vibe of the music rather than, and the funny music as well, rather than getting in deep with some of these heavier, more political kind of bands with their take on life. None of that even. The only time, the first time I ever heard a song which I thought, wow, this is quite heavy, was probably the Boomtown Rats. Rat, not Rat Trap. I don't like Mondays, and I can't even remember when it came out. 79, I think it was. Um, and we were on holiday as well, and I remember it playing a lot, so that was quite effective. And because of the way it starts, we went to, I think, Wales, so it felt very similar to the actual video in visually, kind of rural communities. But yeah, I've loved music ever since, and the one thing I wanted to do when I was at university was I wanted to do my dissertation on music and memory, and so that and to measure specific times in people's lives. So, in other words, for me, like maybe what I was listening to earlier on the way back was music from 1976, from this specific time of January and February. Um, and that's really, really therapeutic to do that. If you've never done that before and you are of an age where you can appreciate the music from maybe when you was like 8 or 9 or 10, it's really, really worth doing it. If you've had like a relatively happy childhood, I mean, because obviously some music can trigger those memories that aren't so good, but I think for the majority of us, um, we we tend to see things through rose-tinted spectacles that have gone before, and so we kind of feel very nostalgic about it. And yeah, for definite, I wanted to actually sort of take little snippets, like a couple of months from this year. So if that person was like 30, 40, um, actually it doesn't really matter, it's from about the age of when they're about 10. And I wanted to take little chunks and then measure through like an ECG or something, brain activity, to see to see how they respond to that, and then compare that to um, another group of participants and see how they respond to just random music from just all over the place, um, and see if there's any difference. See if music really has an effect on the memory and emotion and stuff like that. Um, I didn't get to do it because it was very complicated, and when you're doing a degree, when you're kind of learning something like that, they use that kind of expression that they use in the military, which is KISS, keep it simple, stupid, and I think that came up actually in there. So yeah, ultimately, it unless I'd gone on to be a professional psychologist or worked in university, there was no way I was going to get to do that experiment. But it was really, really nice, and it kind of like it sort of fed into a feeling I had, um, and particularly when I was at college as well. When I was about 30, I was about 32, and I was very happy because I was learning. I didn't do very well at school, and I was learning something for the first time. So going to college, I was listening to music. I can't even remember what I was listening to it on. It might have been a cassette Walkman. Um, I'm making this sound like I'm going to college in the 1980s. We're talking 2001, but you kind of use the equipment that you've got, which is maybe I think it may have been a cassette tape, um, or it might have been an earlier Walkman, a digital one. But anyway, what kind of occurred to me, I was listening to certain kind of bits of music, and I think it was a Bee Gees song. I had the most really bizarre feeling, and this was the first time I'd actually felt this kind of nostalgia, and I've really drank it in since, because I think it's very important. And it was such a weird feeling, and I think also because I was going to college, like I said, I didn't do well at school. I was going to college for the first time, um, learning stuff, and I felt like I was really progressing. I was throwing myself into everything. I was awful at maths at school. I actually, the couple of times that I didn't go to school, um, I was at home hiding because I didn't want to do maths. Um, And I think that was a damning indictment of a maths teacher that he wasn't able to connect. But at college, I mean, I excelled. I really, really did. And I can't remember most of it now, but I just kind of threw myself into it. And then I'm going on this bus. It's like summer. Well, it kind of feels. I think it started in August. And suddenly this overwhelming sensation, like I was being transported to another time. I was just listening to the Bee Gees, for God's sake, but it was such a nice and strange feeling. I kind of felt, I wonder if if I could, manipulate time through nostalgia. And it was shortly after that that I found this, theory called reminiscence, bumping it tied in, and ever since I finished uni, I ended up not doing a quantitative um, experiment um, using statistics, but I did end up doing qualitative, which was like using words and interviews and stuff like that. So it was good. I enjoyed it. That was hard work. A lot more words. Um, so one of them was like experimental. The other one was more discourse based. For anyone who knows like psychology, there's a big difference between qualitative and quantitative. Um, and yeah, that was good. But like I got a job shortly after, and so on my way to work and back, started compiling. I started compiling music. And I've gotten into the pattern. So at this time of year, for example, I will look at the music from two months, January and February, and I'll throw down about sort of like maybe 12, 13 tracks from those 2 months, and that will kind of be the basis for my nostalgia. And I'll do that throughout the years. So, and some years stand out more than others. And also listening to music. Sometimes, if I listen to, and this is the thing as well, I have to listen to these particular months during the same kind of months. So if I'm listening to music from January and February, I wouldn't be doing it in March or April. Um, So I'm always like rejigging the playlist and all the bookmarks as they are on my Walkman. And you get about 100 songs, so I can probably fit about 5, 6 years on there. Um, and yeah, there's certain years where it doesn't mean so much to me. Um, and I think maybe that's kind of something to do with the weather and how I'm feeling. But other years are really, really kind of sharp nostalgia, and it's so warm and lovely. Um, So yeah, I was just fiddling around with 1976 on the way back, and putting some tracks together for anyone who remembers early 1976. A bit of C.W. McCall Convoy, and Tina Charles, Barry White. Who else now? ABBA, and also it's like a couple of tracks from '75 that have gone over to 1976. ABBA, 10cc, Queen. Um, yeah, and Billy Ocean, and so that kind of sets my basis, and you know when you're onto a good thing. It's because you kind of get the feeling, you get the right kind of feeling. So like for example, if I'm listening to music from maybe this, let's say the summer of '76, and and it's it's just kind of miserable, overcast, quite cold maybe in the summer, then I'll probably listen to music then from 1980, from the summer, because my memory of 1980 was it was quite overcast, a little bit chilly. Um, and yeah, so each year had its own kind of vibe, and each month had its own vibe. I know it sounds kind of a bit weird, but I would really honestly recommend you try it, because if you kind of lay down, if you've got like a something you can put playlists on, then if you kind of like pick the songs from those months that you're actually living through at that time, you'll hit one that's actually really really makes you feel good, and sometimes it might just be a single track from that playlist that makes you feel really, really good, but it just brings you back to that time. And this is why I kind of think, maybe time's linear. It goes forward, doesn't go back or up or down. Um, but maybe we can sort of manipulate it in our minds by doing this. Um, and maybe because of the way the world is at the moment, it's not really it's a little bit complicated and harsh, and we have too much information. And these songs reminds us of times when things were a little bit simpler, and maybe we didn't have any responsibility at all because we were just kids. So yeah, I would actually really recommend making a playlist, and yes, since I came up with my idea for music and memory and emotion, back in 2004, there's been many studies that way. A guy called Daniel Levitin is ex-musician, and he was right on the ball with all that stuff. And actually, towards the end of my degree, that was one of the guys that I actually covered one of his papers whilst for my neurophysiology exam, and we had to kind of create a we had to create this kind of poster, and like laminated poster had to like perfectly encapsulate his study. So um, and then we had to present it, and in front of a sort of like an invigilator, if you like. It's in my case, I think I drew the short straw because I had to present my poster in front of a neurosurgeon, and it was it was quite tough because I was mentioning parts of the brain that were relevant to my my poster, but they were sort of like not the main bits. They were just like and of course, when you're dealing with a neurosurgeon, they're going to start cross-examining you. I mean, I did okay in the end. I got about 65%, which I was happy about. Um, but yeah, it was good actually. It was good to cover this guy's paper, and especially after I had ideas about the music and the memory and emotion and stuff, and this guy was a real professional. He was a psychologist, ex-musician, so he knew his stuff, and yeah, since then it's been wonderful to actually find out that in in retirement homes, music music is a big part of trying to help those with Alzheimer's, dementia, and just to kind of keep them grounded. Keep that constant there for them from their past, so that they can ground themselves. So yeah, it's just so yeah, I just wanted to mention that kind of little weird quirk of my life. That's what I do. I love to chunk these little bits of music together and then kind of drink it all in. So let me know actually. Let me know in the comments if you do anything similar, or if this has given you an idea to do something similar. And yeah, if you're roughly the same age as me, and you remember the 70s or 80s, then it might be an idea because music was pretty cool back then. Um, we had a few good decades of music, but I'm not so sure now. It seems to be a bit real kind of mishmash. It's all over the place, and there's very little music I actually hear now that inspires me. Um, but back then, it's some incredible tracks. Anyway, I just wanted to share that with you. So it's another day, another long day is over, and I can chill a bit now. Don't know if there's anything on television. I might just like surf YouTube for a while and have a look to see if any of those people I've subscribed to are have got any videos out. So, folks, yeah, please join me in the comments below. And if you've watched these videos, it'd be lovely if you could subscribe. I'm not mental, um, and I can be a little bit strange. You have to be. I've got my problems. I've got the things that have happened, things that I've taken on in my life, and But if you want to subscribe, I will. I will be a little bit lighter than I have been over the last year, which has been quite an endurance challenge. And yeah, maybe have a bit of fun with his channel and just talk nonsense. And if that's if you're okay to listen to that, then that'd be magic. So yeah, till next time, toodaloo, and take care of yourselves. And if you're out driving, just kind of be careful because I believe this watery snow is going to freeze again at some point. Just hoping that the rain washes it away before it gets a chance to do that. But yeah, just take care anyway because it's pretty grim this time of year.